Welcome to the Color of Success podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie J. Wong. Today, I have Joseph Lam here from Parents Are Human. He is an Asian American entrepreneur who spent the last few years healing a broken and distant relationship with his immigrant parents. He wanted to get to know his mom and dad before it was too late. Joseph co-created Parents Are Human, a bilingual connection card game designed to help immigrant families have deeper conversations and forge stronger ties. Each deck contains 70 prompts with 2 levels of difficulty to inspire connection, compassion, and vulnerability. Each card includes a question or action in English on the front and either Chinese, Vietnamese, Spanish, Korean, or Tagalog on the back to help bridge language, culture, and generational gaps. Please welcome Joseph Lam to our show. Hi, Joseph.
Hey, Dr. Wong. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. I got a stack of your cards, the deck of the cards, and it's just so cute. Parents Are Human, and it has, what I suppose maybe your parents or even grandparents. And I'm so excited to see it in Korean so I can read it in my elementary school level. But tell me a little bit about how this concept came about.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. So the truth is, for about 12 years, I really had no idea how to talk to my parents. This was the deep, dark secret that I kept within me, that I pretty much carried everywhere. And it wasn't until around 2018 when I hit rock bottom, if you will. I had the first company that I started not work out. I had to shut it down. I had a long-term relationship not work out. And what I realized looking around was there really wasn't anything more important than this feeling of so much shame and so much guilt for having mistreated my parents for over a decade. It was this realization that if I didn't confront all of that pain, that lack of a relationship, that inability to talk to them, and feeling like I had to just run away as far as possible every time I was back at home and couldn't wait to, go to a coffee shop to do work because I didn't even know how to be myself around them. I realized that if I didn't confront all of that I would really regret that for the rest of my life. So, I started this journey that was the most challenging and humbling experience I've ever gone through. And along the way, I met a friend, and this was actually her idea. We both had this language barrier of growing up in the US, having elementary school level Chinese. And we realized that, wow, we got to know all our friends by having really deep conversations and getting to know who they are. And we never got that opportunity with our parents. So long story short, we, in about 6 months, put together these questions after interviewing, surveying hundreds of people and looking through literally thousands of questions, and then going through a dozen translations to get them as close as possible to the meaning we were looking for.
Well, talk to me about this process, because there are many immigrant parents that also feel the same thing with their children who were born here or came here at a very young age. And so what was it like to just create or have this unspoken barrier between you guys?
Yeah. I think I would use the word unconscious to answer you in a kind of indirect way. I was really unconscious about it, but it was it was like I didn't realize I was standing on this river my whole life, and it was flowing underneath me. It was the thing that was causing most of my stress and my anxiety. It was like the root, if you will, the root cause of so many of my pains. I was so unaware that I had this rift with my parents. I just thought that, and the story that I made up when I was in middle school was that I just needed to be successful and my life would be okay. And that all came from just being an only child, not really having social skills when I was younger, and getting bullied in middle school and high school. So yeah, the road to success, if you will, was in my mind, to just be super successful and be really good at something. And in the beginning, it was athletics, and then it was running a company. And ultimately, I could not run away. This eventually caught up to me. And I couldn't be happier that I came to that realization and started that journey.
And I think it's really important to point out that that is a common thing, not only in the Asian American community, but in capitalistic society, right? If we just make this much money, we're going to be happy. If we just have this title, and it's like, I call BS, because once you get there, hopefully, I mean, who knows? But once you get there, let's say, you're still you, and then you still have the issues that you're carrying. Yep. And I'm really proud of you for taking on that self-reflection, because not all people, even early on in their lives, will really dig deep to understand that is the root cause of a lot of the issues they're carrying.
Yeah. Our childhoods just form so much of who we are as adults, if not like the majority of who we are. And if we go on thinking that hasn't affected us, I think that is often a very big blind spot. And not to say that it applies to everyone, but sure. I think for most people, it is.
So tell me more about how you selected the questions, because they're great questions, and we'll go into kind of which ones, were really stood out to you when you were playing or are playing with your family, as well as myself. Yeah. But how did you go from like all these thousands of questions and interviewing people to settling on some of these questions?
Yeah, thanks for that. It's a funny experience, to be honest. It was just, I dug up, I think probably like 10 or so books and games, and I just looked through everything. Like I didn't even know that people actually wrote books that exclusively had thousands of questions in them to ask people. So I put them all into this giant Excel sheet, and I just went through them in waves of like, okay, I would only think, or this is interesting, and then this next one is interesting, and this next one is interesting, and we narrowed it down from like 5,000 to I think like several hundred, and then from several hundred, it was like, okay, how many questions do we realistically need in this game? And we did the hard job of only picking 50, and largely that was from. We did this survey in the beginning where I think 100 plus something people filled it out. And we asked them, what were the topics you'd be most interested in learning about from your parents? And then they were life events, so life experiences, their wisdom, just lessons they've learned, their own identity, who they are, and then their relationships. So we found that those questions could fit into those categories, and that's how we made it happen.
Well, Joseph, the psychologist in me is so proud, because you did psychological research, qualitative research that, people do in their senior year in college and, early graduate school and beyond. So, and holding up, you can't, it's hard to read it, but these are like the way the cards look. And so, these categories. So tell me more about the categories. How did you decide on identity and action? Because the action ones are very interesting.
Oh, yeah. The action questions we added in because there for some reason, after picking all the questions, there's something missing. It was like, what is it that can't be? Of course, this game can't create every experience, but there was something missing. And what we realized was, for example, so in my own life, when I started this journey, the first year was purely this, the only goal that I had was not reacting anymore to my parents, to no longer be triggered by them. Not that I wouldn't feel triggered, but I wouldn't actually act on it. And I would do whatever I took to, meditate, to punch a pillow, to go and spend some time alone, journal, talk it out with friends. I just refused to allow myself to be that same 12-year-old me before. And then the second thing that I did was I went to this personal development boot camp, and then they gave us a challenge of go hug your roommates, whoever you live with. And like,
hopefully they took showers.
For absolutely no reason, go hug whoever you live with today. Like, and then tomorrow come back and everyone has to have done it. And I lived with my parents. So I was like, oh shoot, I never hug my parents unless we're going on a trip and I'm about to leave for 6 months. But it was kind of the Asian family dynamic. And so I very tentatively asked them, hey, can I hug you? And of course they were like, of course. And that started about 1.5 years of waking up. And the first thing I would do would give them both a big bear hug. And that was one of the single most powerful things that I did that brought us together, that needed no words. We did not need to talk. And those are the moments that I'll never forget. Like my mom coming up behind me and hugging me while I was sitting and eating breakfast, because she was like, I can't wait for you to hug me. So
that's so cute.
Creating those moments was the thing that was missing. And so it was, why not pick out these actions that, I mean, to be honest, I haven't even done all of them. They are not the easiest when it comes to doing it with family members. It's just awkward.
Yeah. I mean, but what you're really saying is an action opened the door to say, hey, this is okay with me. My boundary is farther than you may think. And hey, I invite you to do the same, right? It's an invitation.
Yep. That's right.
And you're right. Some of the exercises, so the one I just picked out was look into each other's eyes for a minute in silence. This is actually a technique that I use in couples therapy with people.
Oh, nice.
And so it's interesting because the other exercise would be for one partner to talk to the other and the other one can't respond. So it's literally that person, most of the time bearing their soul and just kind of the struggles that they're going through. But it's very powerful if you can have that distress tolerance to sit there and complete it.
Yeah.
So tell me from your perspective how these cards really facilitate intimacy and improve family dynamics.
Yeah, what a good question. From what I'm learning, I think why this game ended up being so helpful for so many families is it creates these disconfirming experiences, if you will, that the old patterns, the old conversations that I personally believed would happen over and over and over again until the day I died, right? Or until my parents were no longer around, that those experiences would never change. That was my belief, that we would end up going to the same loops again and again. And this game, the context of a game, just so happened to open up this doorway to novel experiences, to experiences that would prove otherwise, that we can actually have a conversation about life and very real things in life that don't have to do with the same topics we've always talked about. So I think this has been this way that people start building that. In my mind, it's like a buffer of, I feel more and more comfortable that, or less triggered, and my nervous system is less reactive because I have faith that we don't have to always go into those really painful interactions. So those are just my 2 cents, what I'm gathering so far.
Well, I've recommended it to patients, and one of them said, "This is a genius idea. It's a game changer." And I'm just really happy. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, and I'm like, I don't get any cutback from this. This is just something I find to be helpful. But tell me a little bit more about how you think this can improve mental health in family members.
Yeah, I think it's a similar answer, and for me personally, the amount of stress that like back in the day when this wasn't too long ago, this was like 3-4 years ago, having a phone call from my parents could throw me off my whole day, right? In the middle of the day, I would just be like having to help my parents with something or get really annoyed. And really it was a frustration of myself, of how I reacted to them, and kind of feeling out of control of my own ability to communicate. And that all of that anxiety and that pain and those experiences were probably the things that weighed on me the most. And that was like, 80% of my mental health, what I realized later on. So especially I think for people who are experiencing similar kind of rifts and friction points with their loved ones, this could just alleviate so much of those pains by having new experiences, having for the very first time for me, calm, like multi-hour long discussions about just my parents' life and what they were going through when they were younger and what it's like to truly be them and to get to know them. So
yeah, facilitating empathy is one thing that I heard there, as well as really addressing some of the triggers. And you used a lot of misinformation and misunderstandings that happen when you're just assuming what the other person's experiences and thoughts and feelings are.
Yeah. And I'll add one more thing. To me, I like to describe it as puzzle pieces that I didn't know I didn't have. These are I imagine the reason people get close is because they understand each other's inner world. They kind of have this map of who the other person is and what their past, present, and future are like, what their goals and dreams and fears and insecurities are. And the more that two people know that about each other, the better it is. But with my parents, I had so many gaps. I had no space in my life or time or energy to get to know them in that way when I was younger. So as an adult, as I'm hearing these stories and what they went through, it's as if all the puzzle pieces start to fit together to create that map of wow, if I had walked in my parents' shoes and if I were going through all of what they went through, I probably would have the same beliefs and the same the same behaviors and maybe the same patterns that I don't really like right now. And I'm like, oh, that's why they're that way. And then after that whole experience, I no longer feel as triggered, as in pain, hearing or seeing or witnessing anything that they're doing. It's as if I get it and I'm allowing them to be.
What are some of maybe an example of a specific trigger that would be very common for you?
Yeah, great question. So my mom used to show me her love, and I didn't know this was her love language, by giving me way too much food, like so much food on one plate. And it was a big plate, not even a small one, that I could not possibly finish it. And it would be like for 3 people. So I would get so frustrated and tell my mom pretty much every time we would eat that she put too much food on my plate. And I was like, Mom, how many times do I have to tell you, like, I can't eat all this. And it's like, we're going to have to store it up. And why don't you just let me serve myself and all of that. And she really didn't, like, she always had the same responses of like, well, just eat what you want and then leave the rest to me and I'll clean it up. And I just got so frustrated because I didn't understand that her true love language and the thing that she valued more than anything in her life was the ability to make food and to nourish other people. And that's all because she didn't have any of that when she was growing up. And she went through the great Chinese famine, the Cultural Revolution. And this was a time when people literally peeled all the bark off of all the trees to eat, like all the leaves were gone. All the incense inside of temples were emptied because they were mixing that with water to eat something. And that was the extent of hunger. And she survived because neighbors would roll a watermelon across the street to her, and she would be able to eat it and share it with her whole family. And that was the way that she showed her love, and that continued. And even now, she loves cooking and baking for all her neighbors in our apartment complex. She would go and just, randomly bake muffins and go down and deliver them. So it wasn't until I heard that story over the course of about 3 hours that I finally realized and then made a promise to my mom. I wrote this huge love letter to her over a Mother's Day 2 years ago. And I told her, Mom, I'll never yell at you ever again for giving me too much food. I get it now.
How did she respond?
She was in tears. I was in tears. We were all in tears. And she was just, you know what? She responded in an interesting way. She pretty much just went into her bedroom, got put on amazing clothing that she hasn't worn for a long time, put on all this makeup, and looked super beautiful. And she was like, I want to take a picture with my son.
Oh
so
gosh.
That day, it was Mother's Day. And then we just took a picture together, and that was kind of her. And she was like squeezing me super tight. Yeah.
Is that one of the pictures that you sent me?
No, it's not.
Okay.
It's not. Actually, I need to find that. Yeah. I need to find which picture that was.
That is a fantastic moment and story. And for those that are just listening, there's tears coming out of your eyes now. And it's just so beautiful because it's just such a wonderful, touching moment, and also challenges toxic male masculinity and so forth, which I am continuing to try to chip away with my male Asian American clients and in our community. So,
Dr. Wong, I did not cry for 10 years. That is a fact. Yes, wow. I was like, I'm going to be the tough one. I was like, if I show my emotions, all of the bullies would have won. And this was my coping mechanism from a middle school. And I had to unlearn all of that. I had to allow my tears to flow in my mind as freely as my smiles and my laughter, to be able to feel fully free in life. So I just wanted to say that for anyone who feels similarly of, not
and
showing
how
emotion.
hard. That's so hard to hold it in for 10 years. I mean, I tell people it's like a pot of boiling water. You can push the lid down, but eventually it'll pop out or seep into other areas of your life. And it's exactly what you're describing that happened. So
absolutely.
Your mom's story, tell me what card or cards were most helpful in getting to that rich information and that experience with her?
Yeah, you'd think it's some card down deep in the deck, but it really was the first one.
Wow.
And it was a very deliberate decision to put that as the first card. I can't find it right now because I've mixed this deck up too much. But it's what was your favorite food growing up? Can't find it.
Well, tell me more about how that led to that deeper understanding.
I think it was the easiest question, like easy by what I mean by that is it's so not personal. Like it doesn't, it's not like
topical.
Yeah. It's not like, oh, what's your greatest wish for me? Or what's one thing you wish I knew about you, right? One of those deeper questions.
I have that one right here.
Yeah. It's so like, it's just all about my parents and my mom specifically. Like, hey, I'm wondering, what did you like eating growing up? And the story it started and it didn't stop. My mom started by answering saying, well, I pretty much didn't have anything to eat. She had this mixture of what they used to put on walls as glue to make buildings, which is made of grain, like this grain powder plus water. So glue, industrial glue at the time, food for her from when she was 0 years old until she was 14. So eating that every day, it's a miracle that that these people are alive and that her whole generation, like enough people survived. So yeah, it was 3 hours of hearing exactly what it was like to grow up for her. And I had heard that story before. Put that as the first question because it was just so rich with I think it's possibilities, right? All of these different directions that one could go in about
history.
Yeah, history of their personal preferences, of what food was like, what food was not like. Yeah.
Well, food is so important, at least in my family and cultural community, and it sounds like yours as well. It it has so much richness in it, and in our family, we started this tradition where we spin an electronic wheel every week. We take turns, and it's a different country, and my husband will cook a dish from that country, and it's been really, really good, and it just gets.
Can you buy this wheel somewhere, or did you make it?
It's just on. It's just like a little online thing. It's free.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll send it to you later. But
Please.
It's really good because we're exposing ourselves to these things, and of course, it's Americanized because
Sure.
but we ask friends or anyone that is familiar with the culture to kind of cross-reference and check. But it's such a cool tradition, and also, it gets us outside of our comfort zone as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm inspired. I think I need to do something similar. Cook a little bit outside of what I usually do.
And, one of the questions that I had was, while the cards are written in 2 languages, mm-hmm. there may still be like a language barrier in terms of parents responding to their kids. So what do you recommend in those situations?
Yeah. This may not be the answer that some people may be wanting to hear, but I'll say it anyways.
There's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah, no right or wrong answer. But I think the solution, and I'll first say the kind of the principle behind it. I really believe that one of the hardest lessons I had to learn was I cannot change my parents, right? No matter how much I think it would be the best thing in the world, it'd be the best thing for them, best thing for the planet. I don't have the power to change who they are or make them any different. The only person I can change is myself. So in those situations, I think one of the best solutions to having a language barrier is actually just to learn the family language more, to actually take classes. And one of my best friends, Brandon, he actually in his journey, and we ended up playing this game with my partner and 2 other people. We made a pact called the Parent Project, where we promised publicly that we would play this game with our parents every week, ask at least one question, and then come together to kind of coach each other, to hold each other, and to showcase to the world on a live stream what it's really like to go through this journey of healing our relationship with our parents. So in his journey, Brandon's journey, he actually ended up paying for Cantonese classes just to understand her mom more. And he realized, wow, like speaking to her in Cantonese, she actually has a completely different personality. She is much more eloquent and like smooth talking and at ease. And it's like talking to a different person.
Mm-hmm. There's nuances of a personality that get suppressed when you don't.
Absolutely.
When you're not fluent.
Yeah. So I think that's one solution to, I think that's maybe one of the most sustainable long-term solutions, if there really is that big of a language barrier. And our cards, I'm really pleasantly surprised that a lot of people actually use it for language learning. They end up practicing by saying our prompts out loud and working together with their family members to understand the language more.
And tell me a little bit about this pact or recommendations for other families, like 1 to 2 questions a week. Like what do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I think everything is a lot easier with other people, with other human beings. So, calling my parents was one of those things that barely ever made it onto my to-do list. if ever. And I would go 3 weeks without calling my parents, and I'd feel so much guilt around it. Deep down, I always knew it was one of the most important things, but, back burner. So putting that out into the world as a promise that I'm making with my friends, putting together a little group of 3 to 4 people makes it that much easier to commit to it. And we played once a week. I think it's a stretch, but it's a really good rhythm, because I think it feels best when we call our loved ones at least once a week, right? Yeah. Something like that. And this just so happens to be one of those conversation starters that usually leave us really proud and happy and feeling better than ever of the time we spent with them.
Yeah, I think consistency is key, because the conversations aren't just one and done. It's building upon that initial question and moving forward, so you don't close the door again.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to share a question. So we started playing, and my husband is kind of a huge TikToker, so he wants to continue to do TikTok with it. He's like, wait, we got to stop. So we did several cards, but he wants to eventually do that. I'm like, okay. But
that sounds amazing. Show him.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, we'll send those to you, I guess, if we ever get around to them. But one of the ones I wanted to share was, what is your favorite memory of your parent? And it's interesting because, I have children, and so they answered for us, and just really random things that I would never think are really their favorite memory. But for me, so my mom and I are very, very close. She actually lives with us. And she, we have a very different relationship than most people have in general, but just so open, we can talk about anything. But the prompt was really great, because I was like, Mom, what I remember is that, we didn't have a lot of money, but you would always spoil us and make sure we had the latest toy, or, we went to Toys R Us as a hangout just to walk around. Mm-hmm. And the Power Rangers, I'm going to put it in air quotes and it'll make sense. The Power Rangers were at our local Toys R Us. She had us line up, and, Yellow Ranger was all the rage for the Asian American community, especially for women. And so we went there and met them, and it was just this magical experience. I go to school the next day in elementary school, and one of my friends is like, you didn't meet the Power Rangers, because I met the Power Rangers. And I go, what are you talking about? I met the Power Rangers, you trust your mom and stuff like that. And she's like, well, did they take off their helmets? And I was like, no. And so she showed me, let me show you my pictures of them without their helmets. Sure enough, the actors were there and all that. So I go home and I asked my mom, are those the real Power Rangers? And she goes, yeah. And I didn't want to break her heart. And I overheard on the news that night that they were at that hotel that my friend had gone to meet them.
Oh, no.
But that sticks in my mind, because my mom wanted that for us. She wanted us to have that experience. And quote unquote, real or not, it was something that just shows how much she loved my brother and I to stand in line and even see some fake Power Rangers. And later, during this conversation, I said, did you know they were fake? She's like, hell yeah, I knew they were fake. So that's how my mom and I talk to hilarious. Each other. So, it's just one of those magical things that brings up some, good memories. And also it could bring up very difficult, bad memories. But I think what you're speaking to as well is that even in the face of conflict, and it's not just with parents, but with close friends, with other family members, it's not so much not fighting at all. It's about, when you do approach conflict, can you repair the relationship and move forward? That is the key for me anyways, for intimacy and for building relationships. Most of us can think of a friend that we're close with because we fought before.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've heard the saying that to have human relationships without conflict is like absurd. To not have it, to not have conflict is an impossibility, because we're human, and it's not ever about being perfect. I still at times will just feel this intense trigger of, I have the story of my dad maybe not being good at technology, and I'm still trying to unwind that story. And there were moments in my journey where I absolutely got frustrated again and raised my voice at them, and I was not proud at all of doing that. And no matter what, it wasn't about like not doing that anymore. It was coming back and apologizing eventually. And I almost couldn't go to sleep until I did it. So it was always the same day. And the truth is, we had some of our best conversations, period, in our whole relationship, just from those conversations that stemmed from me apologizing. Mm-hmm. We actually started talking about what our patterns, and my parents started reflecting about their patterns and taking responsibility themselves, and just all these surprises that I would have never known and never experienced unless I stepped in. So yeah, thank you for saying all of that.
Oh yeah, my another funny story is my husband was talking to his father and my father-in-law, and I overhear them. They always talk loud, so they weren't yelling at each other. They're like, "Dad, press Control C. It copies the words on the computer." Yeah. And it goes, but where does it copy to? He's like, it goes in the computer. And he's like, yeah, but you can't see it. And it was hilarious. And so
that is so funny.
Yeah. And just those things of like, it's a really cute story, but it was like, my husband is just like rolling his eyes and shaking his head, but he's like the most patient person ever, because he's done this all his life, but just their conversation's hilarious.
Oh my goodness. Now I'm wondering, wait, why don't computers show that like something that something has copied, at least, right?
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, right? Like someone in their 70s has a frame of reference that's very different than us and Gen Zers and so forth. So, I mean, again, an amazing game, an amazing story. So where do you see your company, your partner's company going? And how do you envision expanding on this idea?
Yeah, I think so in 2 short years, I actually recently this year went full-time on it. So I quit my job and was like, this just has to be in the world, and hopefully on as many family dining room tables as possible. So we got around 900 language requests. Actually, it's probably close to 1,000 now in just 2 short years. And it was mind-blowing. Like, I did not realize first that in 900 being requests and about 45 unique languages. I just didn't know that there were so many people out there that would be really interested and would want to pre-order and would want to be on the waiting list and would want it in their language. So the goal is hopefully to make it in all of those languages. I think it's just so necessary, like all the effort that it takes to make one deck, which is a huge community effort. We have like dozens of translators and reviewers volunteering their time to review one version after another. Translation is a really hard thing. And I just think that's like the best use of my time, period. I would want to see all these families have these conversations, and the amount of calls and the emails that I get, the stories where people are pouring their hearts out around what they've experienced when they were younger and everything that they've been able to do with the game. I'm dreaming of the day when this is as popular as, say, Cards Against Humanity, right? Something that almost every family kind of understands and knows of, but indispensable.
I mean, absolutely. And distribution, we need to get it in Target or something like that. Yeah. So it's easier or made to order or whatnot. But I mean, how do you choose the languages? Because I know the recent survey had so many requests and you chose a couple of them, and you can mention your Kickstarter as well.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah. We made it kind of easy. It's just a Google form that we listed out all the languages, multiple choice, and we're making whichever one hits 50 first. So Vietnamese was by far our number one language. I think there's like 10 million or so Vietnamese immigrants in the United States alone. Just diaspora is huge. And then Spanish was second, Korean was third, and Tagalog was fourth. So making it in that order this year. And I believe it's Japanese, French, Arabic, one other language afterwards. So that's probably my first priority in 2022. Made it kind of simple because I knew that if I tried to make the decision, it'd be way too hard.
Yeah, I like that. And I can't wait to give the Vietnamese deck to my in-laws, and they can play. And it's interesting because the memory that you bring to your parent or parents, they have different perspectives of it, right? Like my husband was saying that his mom bought him his first glove, and he was a big baseball player back in the day.
Wow. Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, I just bought that glove because I was trying to help this guy selling gloves," versus him is like, I told my mom I love baseball and I wanted to play.
No way.
She bought it for me. And just kind of, it wasn't his dad who's the one to like start the spark per se, to move him from interest to action. So just
wow. What an interesting thing to find out about, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love the story. So,
hey, Dr. Wong, question for you. So with the Power Ranger story, just to confirm, this was you sharing what your favorite memory was of your mom, right? Did your mom say anything in return about her favorite memory of her parents?
It was actually very sad that she did not have a happy memory of her mom.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that was emotional in and itself. Her father died in her teenage years, and her mom was left with 4 kids to raise, illiterate, working 12 to 14-hour days, and just not a very nice and not very nice even on her very few off times. And so and my mom corroborated that with her siblings. One of them said the same. Another one said, I don't know, one thing that wasn't even like per se specific to their mom, but it's not just like quote unquote in my mom's head that was the case. But it led to some tears. And I said, but you know what? Like, the one thing that I will say is that she gave birth to you, which then led to these generations, like you giving birth to me, which I'm your retirement plan. And then me giving birth to my daughters. And so without her mom, despite however horrible she treated them, it still led to some very wonderful things in your life.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that story, and how real and raw it was for your mom. It's that is not easy. Wow.
Yeah. And then my husband's a shitster, nicest guy ever, but shitster. He's just like, oh, come on, you can't think of like one positive thing. And she was like, go away. Like, no, I can't. So
oh no.
Eventually, they're fine like an hour next day or whatever, but they bicker all the time. And so by the way, like if you go on his TikTok, it's all him pranking grandma, basically.
Oh my goodness, please send it to me.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like she went viral like 2 times on some of this, I say, because showing your stupidity, and it's just so funny. But in all seriousness, like these conversations, like I will say, can lead to some very painful memories, as you said, but I think those are the painful memories that we need to know about our parents to fully understand them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yes. It's in my experience with my mom, there are certainly no lack of tearful incidents of us talking about, her parents as well, going through some of the worst pains I could ever imagine for another human being. And yeah, it's I've never regretted it. I've always been so grateful and thankful that I've heard those stories. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, where can people get this amazing game and learn more when the Kickstarters come out and all that?
Yeah, so everything can be found on our website, parentsarehuman.com. We got lucky and got all of the handles. So Parents Are Human on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter.
I saw that. Amazing.
Yeah, TikTok. Yeah, we haven't put any TikTok videos out, but hopefully that changes soon. And we do have a Kickstarter right now. It's really just our way of fundraising early to cover our manufacturing. It's quite expensive. Mm-hmm. So you can pre-order the Vietnamese, Korean, Spanish, Tagalog, and this English-only version that you can customize because all the backs are going to be blank. So you can, write your own translations, questions, and whatnot. And you can just find that on our website or go to Kickstarter and search up Parents Are Human.
Thank you so much, Joseph. You're such a pleasure. And I'm just so glad that you reached out to share your game. And I was just like, after I got the game, I started playing. I wanted to do that before inviting you on because I'm like, what if this game sucks?
It's possible. It's very possible.
I'm kidding. I knew it wasn't going to suck. But I think that after playing, I have that experiential piece to ask you more deep questions. And I love the game. And, the thing about it is you can play it with kids, of all ages that can actually, comprehend some stuff. I mean, the youngest in our family is 7. And obviously the different levels. I mean, she reads very well because like every good Asian, she goes to Kumon. So she can understand that. But definitely if they have those able to kind of articulate their experiences, like fantastic,
Yeah. Start the conversations early. I wish I did.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a big thing is emotional development, socio-emotional development for kids now, because I truly believe that facilitating kindness and empathy can really change our world for future generations, for sure.
I couldn't agree more.
Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. Thanks again. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Color Success Podcast. Listen, like, subscribe on all major streaming platforms, YouTube, IG, and if you want exclusive content, you can join our Patreon. All links can be found at colorofsuccesspodcast.com.